The Forgotten Curse of St. Margaret's Academy Street. Margaret's Academy had always been a place of mystery. Nestled in the fog-shrouded hills of rural England, the centuries-old boarding school had an air of grandeur, its Gothic architecture casting long shadows over the quiet grounds. Its ivy-covered walls had seen generations of students come and go, yet whispers of something darker always lingered. The school had a secret, one that only revealed itself when the sun dipped below the horizon and the wind howled through the empty halls. For years, students spoke of strange happenings, odd noises echoing through the corridors, lights flickering when no one was around, and most unsettling, the story of the headmaster's curse, a legend dating back to the 19th century. But it was just that, a legend, told to scare new students. No one took it seriously. No one, until one fateful winter when the curse made itself known again. It was the year 1994, and a particularly harsh winter had descended on St. Margaret's. Snow piled high against the stone walls, and icy winds whistled through every crack and crevice. The school was nearly cut off from the outside world, and the students and staff alike had begun to feel the isolation. In the midst of this bleak season, 4 students found themselves drawn together by a shared curiosity. Amelia, a quiet girl with a passion for history, had stumbled across an old, tattered book in the school's library. It wasn't just any book. This one contained the lost history of the school, including the tale of the headmaster's curse. Sitting in the warmth of the library's fireplace one evening, Amelia showed the book to her 3 friends: Robert, a tall boy with a skeptical mind; Sarah, a bubbly girl who loved ghost stories; and Daniel, a boy with a knack for solving puzzles. "I found this hidden behind some old volumes," Amelia said, her voice hushed as she spread the book on the table before them. "It's a history of the school, going back to the 1800s. "Sounds boring," Robert muttered, leaning back in his chair. "What's so special about it?" Amelia turned the pages carefully until she reached a chapter titled The Disappearance of Headmaster Aldrich. Sarah leaned forward eagerly. "Wait, is this the story about the curse?" "Yes," Amelia whispered, "but there's more to it than just a ghost story." She began to read aloud, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. The Curse of Headmaster Aldrich. In 1865, St. Margaret's was under the strict leadership of Headmaster Thomas Aldrich, a man known for his rigid discipline and unyielding rules. The students feared him, and the staff whispered that Aldrich had a dark side, though no one dared speak of it openly. One winter, a student named Eliza Martin disappeared without a trace. The authorities searched the grounds and surrounding countryside, but she was never found. Rumors spread among the students that Aldrich was somehow responsible for her disappearance, but nothing was ever proven. Soon after, strange things began to happen. Doors would slam shut on their own. Students reported hearing Eliza's voice in the night, and the temperature in certain parts of the school dropped inexplicably. Months later, on a particularly stormy night, Headmaster Aldrich himself vanished. His office was found locked from the inside, but when the door was forced open, there was no sign of him, only his coat, hat, and an open window. No one ever saw him again, but legend has it that his spirit still roams the halls of the academy, seeking revenge on those who dare to question his authority. The students who attended the school in the years following Aldrich's disappearance began to speak of a curse, that anyone who dared to investigate his fate would suffer the same. Amelia paused, glancing up at her friends. "And here's the strangest part. Every 25 years, students go missing from St. Margaret's, always during the winter term. And each time, it's on the anniversary of Headmaster Aldrich's disappearance." Sarah shivered, but her eyes gleamed with excitement. "That's today, isn't it? The anniversary?" Robert rolled his eyes. "It's just a coincidence. The book is probably just some old wives' tale." But Daniel, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward, a thoughtful look on his face. "What if it isn't? What if there's something real behind this? Didn't you say there were missing students every 25 years? That sounds like more than just a story." Amelia nodded. "The last disappearance was in 1969. 2 boys vanished after wandering into the old East Wing. It's been locked ever since." Robert stood up, shaking his head. "You can't seriously be suggesting we go poking around in the East Wing. The place is probably falling apart by now." But Sarah's curiosity got the better of her. "Let's do it. If it's locked, there's probably a reason. Maybe we'll finally figure out what happened to those students, and to Headmaster Aldrich." Despite Robert's bundle of skeleton keys they had borrowed from the janitor's office. The East Wing was the oldest part of the school, built centuries ago and long since abandoned. It was rumored to be haunted by more than just the headmaster's ghost, but no one had been inside for years. The heavy oak doors groaned as Daniel unlocked them, and a blast of icy air greeted them as they stepped into the dark corridor beyond. The cold was overwhelming, far worse than the rest of the school. Their breath misted in the air as they moved cautiously down the hallway, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The floorboards creaked underfoot, and the sound of the wind whistling through the cracks in the stone sent shivers down their spines. "I don't like this," Robert muttered, his voice low. "We should go back." But the others were too engrossed in their search to listen. They pushed deeper into the wing, passing old classrooms and offices, their windows long boarded up. The further they went, the stronger the feeling of unease became. At last, they reached a door at the end of the hall, the headmaster's old office. "This is it," Amelia whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for the doorknob. To their surprise, it wasn't locked. The door creaked open, revealing a room that looked as though it had been untouched for over a century. Dust covered every surface, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Sarah stepped inside first, her flashlight illuminating the old wooden desk and bookshelves. "Look at this place," she breathed. "It's like a time capsule." Amelia moved to the desk, her fingers brushing against the stack of old papers. These must have belonged to Headmaster Albert. Daniel, however, was drawn to the window. It was cracked open, just as the book had described. Snow blew in from outside, settling on the floor in a thin layer. "This is where he disappeared," Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But how? The window isn't big enough for anyone to climb out." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway outside, followed by the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, as if someone was approaching. The group froze, their hearts racing. The temperature in the room plummeted, and their flashlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "What was that?" Robert hissed, his face pale. Before anyone could answer, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Sarah screamed, and Daniel rushed to the door, trying to open it, but it wouldn't budge. "We're locked in," he shouted, pulling at the handle with all his strength. Amelia backed away from the desk, her eyes wide with fear. "It's him. It's Aldrich. He's here." The sound of footsteps grew louder, echoing through the room. They turned, shining their flashlights on the source of the noise, but there was no one there. Instead, they saw something far more terrifying, an outline of a figure, barely visible in the darkness, standing in the corner of the room. It was a man, tall and gaunt, dressed in the formal attire of a headmaster from centuries past. His face was obscured in shadow, but his eyes, dark, hollow, and filled with rage, were unmistakable. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure whispered, its voice cold and hollow. "You've disturbed what should remain forgotten." The group backed away, terror gripping their hearts. The figure began to move toward them, its form flickering in and out of existence like a ghostly apparition. "We have to get out of here," Sarah cried, her voice trembling. But before they could move, the figure raised a hand, and the temperature in the room dropped even further, freezing the very air around them. The walls began to close in, and the sound of faint whispers filled the air, voices of the past, calling out in anguish. Amelia clutched the book tightly to her chest, her mind racing. "The curse, it's real. He's trapped here, just like the others." Daniel, his hand still on the door, turned to her. "What do we do?" But before anyone could answer, the figure lunged toward them, its eyes glowing with malevolent energy. The room erupted into chaos as books flew off.